Welcome to Quality Matters, where we speak with experts across industries to see how their perspectives can inform our pursuit of high quality education for all students. I'm Shaka, and this is Caitlin, and we're happy to be your guides for this limited series.
Like you, Shaka and I are passionate about all students having access to a great education, and quality is a driving force behind our work. But what does quality really mean? In an era where parents can customize their child's education, this question is more important than ever.
During each session, we'll hear from leaders in education, technology, business, sports, and the arts. We hope to apply their insights to our pursuit of a great education in the K-12 space.
Join us on this journey to secure a great education for all children. This is Quality Matters. Ricky, thank you so much for joining us all the way from St. Louis. We're really excited today. Shaka and I are excited to learn more about Butler's Pantry, your industry, the world of hospitality and catering. There's bound to be lots of parallels to different professions, to education, and we're excited to learn more. So to kick us off, can you give us a little background as to Butler's Pantry, where it started, how it came about, and more?
Butler's Pantry, I am the second generation owner, small family business here in St. Louis, Missouri. We started about 56, 57 years ago with my parents and a vision that they saw in Europe when they were traveling. And they thought home meal replacement was a word that had in the 60s had never really come about. But they really started as like a gourmet to go where families could come and pick up dinner or pick up lunch for offices and things like that. And so they quickly pivoted to not only kind of a home meal replacement type concept like a gourmet to go, but to catering, full service catering. And that's really how Butler's Pantry got its start, is the need to change because the original concept wasn't paying the bills. And really the rest is kind of history, because that's really what our focus has been from the onset, is corporate events, nonprofit events, social events, whether that's a wedding or a party at somebody's home. Those have really been kind of our core silos of business. That's kind of a nutshell. I know hopefully gives you a little bit of information. And if there's any questions that I can expand on or expound on, please let me know.
Ricky, I'm curious about uh, sort of the business model and what some of the drivers are that you think about when you think, okay, we're doing a great job. Butler's Pantry is really hitting on all cylinders. Is that obviously there's a sort of bottom line, say revenue and profit, but do you think about employee retention? Do you think about customer satisfaction? Do you go around in the test kitchen and you're eating things? And that would be my dream. Is I would like to be a dessert tester. What are the there's a lot of different factors, it seems to me, in the hospitality industry that are meaningful. So how do you determine what's the driver?
Great question, and I will tell you that we start with our 4 Ps when not only when we're hiring, but when we're evaluating our team members. We call it our P pod, and really is one of our focuses is on positivity, on passion, on poise, and putting people first. And that's what we think of when we think of hospitality. And when all those come together, it really comes down to having the right person representing our brand. Our brand is targeted to an individual that is seeking quality, is seeking creativity, and is seeking dependability when they choose us. And I think that that's been our success, is that we provide what is promised, but we always try to deliver more than expected. And that's again kind of a motto that we try to live by in all of our business assets. Our business is essentially set up as culinary production, operations being delivery and logistics and setup, We have a warehouse of equipment that we provide, whether that's back of the house kitchen equipment that we provide for most events, to china, glassware, silverware for the front of the house. And then we have sales and marketing and event production kind of under one roof, and then it kind of admin under another silo. So, not sure that I really answered that in full, but maybe it gives you a little bit of information to maybe expand upon.
Ricky, I am curious. Your four P's: positivity, passion, poise, and putting people first. All of those P's lead to a high quality working environment, I'm imagining. What are some of the challenges or the impediments that get in the way of being able to execute on those four P's? Does anything come to mind or?
I would say our volume of business, because we are, one of the largest companies in the state as far as comes to catering, off premise catering specifically. The volume of business can make things challenging on the individual and enforcing those four P's at certain times. So I think that's one of the things we juggle really almost on a weekly and monthly basis. Is we certainly want to be there for our clients, but there are times throughout the year when we have to say no because of maybe the stress that it's going to put on our team, the ability to know our boundaries, but most importantly, those clients that we've already committed to. And so we really think that while it's very tough to say no to some people, and we always like to say yes, we can do that, but we're going to have to do it. Yes, we can do that, but it might have to be on a different date, or it might have to be in a different kind of service, and so that our clients at least have an option to use us, but at the same time, we haven't put our brand in jeopardy of failing.
Totally. I'm going to follow up really quickly with just the inverse of the question. If those are what's stopping you, and volume, that's something we hear about in other professions as well. This idea of wanting to deliver something high quality or wanting to produce something that's high quality, but being able to put parameters around um, the production or around the product so that the quality remains intact. What allows you to create these high quality events, these high quality interactions, these high quality products um, when you guys are in high demand or when you're navigating lots of different complications?
We have developed other lines. We have a catering line called E Now, which stands for Entertaining Now, and it's a simpler form of catering. It generally does not come with a service element, meaning a bartender or a waiter, but it allows our clients on a busy weekend to say, "Okay, I'm entertaining 15 or 20 people, and I really want to have tenderloin, or I really want to have a shrimp display, or I really want to have a charcuterie. But I understand that you're kind of at your limit, whether that be for service or whether that be for delivery or logistics. But I'm willing to utilize this new brand or newer brand to get some of the quality that we like on a day, that they've seen from us in the past." And so I think we're always trying to evolve to meet our clients' demand, or at least to provide an option for them, so that we don't just say no. It's just so hard in our business to say no. And in the hospitality field, you're taught from day one that yes, yes, we can do that, we can handle that. So I think that that's one way that we deal with our clientele, is just trying to find other ways to say yes to them.
Yeah, I'm curious to pick up on that sort of evolution sort of concept. I mean, you mentioned that Butler's Pantry, I think you said, nearly 57-year-old business at this point. which is really impressive. And congratulations to you and your family and all the employees. I'm curious about how you've seen the business, particularly your own business, or maybe even the industry, innovate and adapt over time, right? I mean, 57 years ago, we're talking about things like microwave dinners were really innovations, right? That's no
Right, right.
longer the case. Now, now we're doing different things, and now you've got lots of delivery meal services and things like that. What have been some of the ways that you've seen your business innovate to try to meet customer demand, but maintain quality?
Again, over the years, we have innovated, and what we have to do on a daily basis is deliver an experience and a cuisine and a service that matches what you might find in a fine dining restaurant or in a fine country club or in a hotel. That's our competition. And so over the years, we have to find ways to provide something better than, as you say, a microwave dinner, because that's really what it was 57 years ago. Food was produced in our commissary and literally went out to somebody's home and rewarmed. Now the expectation is, how can we put that how can we put that steak out so that it competes with the best steak that you could find in your city. And we, I think, have done a great job with that. And really, the evolution of our business has come from the providing a better workplace, providing better equipment, providing a culinary experience for our staff. And I think that's really important, that team and the people that we employ today versus those that were doing it 50 years ago have a living wage, have some benefits, whether that's PTO or whether that's paid maternal leave or 401k. We have to compete with other industries and careers to ensure that people can sustain a nice life. And so I think that one of the innovations specifically that I'm most proud of in the hospitality industry is is the rewards provided to our team members. If 30 or 40 years ago, if your son or daughter came to you and said that you're getting a job in a restaurant, you're like, oh, my son or daughter hasn't really come to their full potential. But now today, with the celebrity chefs, with all the great restaurants that are out there and all the great products that the hospitality restaurant industry provide, it's a great place, a quality place to hang your hat.
So much of what you're saying, in my mind, like the parallel is so strong between the way you're running your business in your industry and the idea of how education is currently being run. And the parallel is not that they are being run in the same direction or that they're incorporating the same models. I think that the parallel is that what you're highlighting are all of the inefficiencies or the failures of how some of the schooling systems are being run. For example, you're talking about this idea of innovation, the way your business has adapted over the last 57 years. The onus that you put on the people that are working for you and the creative minds that are adding to your business, I don't know that the education system does that well. I don't know that we rely on the teachers or the practitioners to inform this what education needs right now to meet the demands of the students in the same way that you talk about innovating to meet the demand of your clients and your constituents. The thinking being when you guys innovate, you're meeting the demands of um, again, your clients and your constituents because you have lots of creative input and you have given responsibility to people that work on your team and allowed them to contribute into what the business looks like moving forward. Are there specific um, things that you do to create that environment that allow people to contribute their ideas to the business, or that make them feel confident and comfortable enough to give input and advice so that your evolution of business continues to meet the client's needs?
Absolutely. And, it's been several years since I've been in an educational experience, but I do know that there are changes, at least in maybe some of the private and charter schools, to educate our young in maybe a different way. With that being said, our team members, we have an organization, or we have a group that meets every month, with the idea of making it better every day. We call it our MIBE Tribe. And what's interesting about my tribe is we bring our dishwashers together, we bring our culinary people together, we bring our operations people together, from managers on up, to talk about what are some of the challenges, what are some of the things that are keeping them up at night, how can we make it better every day. And so, I think that that's probably key to any business that wants to continue to be relevant, is you have to listen to what your team members want. You'd have to listen to what some of your colleagues specifically are doing. We're part of an organization called Elite Catering and Event Professionals, and it's a group of about 50 some odd caterers from across the country. We even have a member from Germany. We even have a member from Canada, that come together twice a year, through kind of a symposium in a city, where we talk about the best practices. And I think that that's what is helping to drive our industry specifically, is that we're looking. What's great about this organization is, probably 30 years ago, everybody was like, I'm not going to tell you my secret. But in this particular format, we get together and we share those, because what's good for our industry is good for our business, and helps make for a better workforce and a better product.
I really love this MIBE Tribe, Caitlin. I think we're going to talk about that in the breakdown for sure, after this. Vicky, one of the things that I'm curious about too is what the feedback loop looks like for you, because I can imagine it. Frankly, I can imagine having a really fast feedback loop. I mean, we've all seen the immediate Yelp reviews where people are leaving like a Yelp review about a restaurant before they've even hit the parking lot. And, but also some of the events you're doing, I would guess, you mentioned things like weddings or corporate events. You might be on an annual cycle, so you might not know if you're going to get that repeat business for a whole year or 9 months or something. So how do you I guess shorten that feedback loop so that you can get actionable information and respond to it?
I really like that question, because there's a difference between the restaurant industry and the catering industry. And to your point, I think the restaurants get immediate feedback, whether, as you say, through Yelp or through internet. And the restaurant business, you're dealing with maybe six couples or four couples or three couples, and maybe the fish wasn't cooked right, or something was not right, and you're going to get that. Or it's great, and you get great feedback that everything went over. In our industry, you're generally working with one customer, which is paying the bill. And so the feedback isn't always immediate. And so we do dig a little bit deeper. First of all, we want them to take time to digest how the guest experience was. And most of the time, it's always positive, from a standpoint of, hey, that's the best wedding meal that I've ever had, or that was the most creative, charcuterie design I've seen. But we dig a little deeper. In fact, we also provide our service team, not only our service captain who runs the service team, but our service team members, the ability to immediately respond through feedback after the event, to say, hey, this was late, this was overcooked. This looked great. This was forgotten. And again, we get a little bit more leeway because we can react a little quicker than say a restaurant that you've waited 30 minutes for your meal to come out. We can react a little bit quicker to in those and change anything that might change a process that might slow things up or cause an encumbrance.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, how do you navigate poor quality, whether it's, um, what you're delivering or based off of feedback or based off of internal review? It's bound to happen at some point or another. What does that look like from your guys's?
And that is few and far between, but when it does happen, there's always kind of a what went wrong? How do we evaluate it? We talk, we bring the group together to determine, what steps were missed in our process that caused the steaks to be overcooked or the chicken to be tough. What did we do wrong? So there is an evaluation process when we get feedback that is negative. But I can say that generally is few and far between, knock on wood, that we've been around and our processes have been in place that if we've trained somebody well, and I will say, Caitlin, that it does come back. One of our big philosophies, and really has been since my parents started the business, is we don't use a lot of temp labor. In fact, probably the only time you'll see a temp person on, you will probably never see a temp person on an event, but you might see a temp person working in our commissary to help chop vegetables or help slice meat or assist somebody that has been trained or a staff member that has been trained. But I think that is probably the biggest component in our secret sauce, is that when we commit to an event, our people have been trained. They know what our processes are. They know what hospitality means to Butler's Pantry, and so I think that really has been, as I said, from day one. If we're going into somebody's home or we're going into somebody's business, we have to know who we're sending, and they have to know how we operate. Because if they're drinking on the job or smoking on the job or taking excessive breaks, that's just not our style, and it comes that immediately comes through. So. I hope I answered that question properly for you.
Yeah, I just love the idea that each of the representatives and employees own the quality of the work product, and there's a sense of pride in that quality, and there's a sense of pride in the work that they're doing. I'm curious where you think your definition of quality came from. I have experienced your work product. It's tremendously high quality. The process from start to finish is high quality, but I'm curious how your definition of quality was informed.
So, really, from the beginning, and whether it was passed on by my parents or just something that we have grown into, is hey, we will work with a client on different budgets. And again, a part of our secret success is we hate to say choose A, B, or C package, and that A, B, or C packages cost X, Y, or Z, and you have to spend that money to do business with us. So we look at it as if we can do an event without cutting quality, without cutting, the things that make up a quality event, whether that's staffing or whether that's beverages or whether that's equipment or rentals or florals. If we can do an event in a quality manner within our guidelines, within our price guidelines, we're going to do it. We're not going to, and I think that some companies will be like, oh, well, this client can only spend $30 per person, so let's cut the portion or let's use an inferior ingredient, and that we have found has always been almost a domino effect. If you take one quality product out of the equation, or you use something that's inferior, it never ever shines through that you did a great event. It always comes back to haunt you. So I think, um, you know, we always try to find a way to cut the cloth to fit the pattern, but we're not going to use something that is, not acceptable, or might be, again, something that the client is expecting to be at a certain level, but because their price point was at a certain thing, we cut back on portion, or we cut back on the quality of the product that we're using. Those things get seen pretty quickly, and that's just, I think, how we try to maintain quality is, even if it meant us taking a few dollars out of our profit to make the product better, we're going to do that. And we've always said that to our clients is, listen, if there's a way for us to spend a little bit more of our profit to make your event better, we're going to do that. And I think it shows through with our willingness to work with our clients.
Ricky, obviously, Butler's Pantry is it's a family owned, family started, family owned business. Your dad sort of started this thing. I think I know that your son is also working in the business. How do you think about legacy, both maybe from a personal standpoint, but in this, for you, the personal and professional are really intimately connected, right? And I'm looking at your background. I see a whole lot of pictures as well, um, and I wonder how you think about what this work means for the future.
So funny that you bring up the office, because my team, our leadership team, is like, would you please get rid of some of that stuff? And it's so hard, to do. But I do need to kind of pare it back a little bit.
Yeah.
But when you think about legacy, and the fact that we've been doing it for 57, 58 years, we started in '66, so we're moving, in the right direction, and we are lucky to have a third generation. Both my son, Ricky, or Richard the third, and my daughter Peyton are involved in the business currently in different roles, and they are at a point where somebody else is teaching them the job versus me having to teach. So I think it's really important in my legacy that I'm not the one trying to pass on. This is what I believe in. This is what we've always done. They need to see how the business is evolving. They're in the day to day business, so that's great. I think one of the biggest legacies that Butler's Pantry has, will leave and continues to is our philanthropic. We have a motto that we want a full life is a full pantry, and so we focus on give back where we can. Our team members all have certain volunteer efforts that they make. Because of our business, we're involved in so many nonprofits, that we are able to kind of dabble in, trying to make St. Louis a better place to live for all. And I think that will continue to be a focus, is that if you're doing business with us, we want to find a way to support your mission, and find a way to make St. Louis a better place to live. And I think that that's one of the things that people like about us, is they know that we're not just banking this money and putting it into other communities or into other you know assets that really don't mean anything. I think we show every day, both to our employees and to the people that do business with us, that we're in this community, and we want to see it thrive.
I think the strong sense of community is palpable. The sense of innovation and just hearing more about how you guys meet the needs of the people that you serve is inspiring. I'm excited for this discussion and Shaka and I to be able to take some of these things that we learned about your industry and apply them to the industry that both of us are most familiar with, which is the industry of education. Because like I mentioned a little while ago, there's so many parallels and there's so much that people in the education space can learn from the people in the service industry and the hospitality industry. Um, so I'm really grateful for all of the stories and lessons you shared and to allowing us the opportunity to come into your world and your profession.
Caitlin, it's so funny that you bring up education. There's an institute, it's called the Augustine Institute, St. Augustine Institute, is moving their headquarters from Denver to St. Louis, and they're a theological college, and they have a pillar. You know, they have three. I think they have three pillars. But one of the things that their president has talked about with this move to St. Louis, and they're wanting to establish a true campus of outreach, is hospitality. It's amazing that it's not just service, it's not just education, being the brightest, but you have to have um, the ability to communicate with others in a thoughtful and genuine way. And I think hospitality does that. Those people that are in the hospitality industry, practice it every day. The Ritz Carlton's theme is, ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. And I
Mm,
think that that's really important. And it was really interesting to me that this institute that is moving here to St. Louis has said hospitality needs to be a form of education, and so maybe there's a movement, that education can take on some of the positive attributes that we have in our industry.
I love that, and
absolutely.
it makes me think about Saint Paul's letter to the Romans, and he says, contribute to the needs of the saints and seek to show hospitality, right? And so from that's 2,000 years ago. I think this that ethos was highlighted as being super important, and we appreciate the time that you've given us, the hospitality you've shown us by letting us invade a little bit and learn more about what you do.
It's really my pleasure, and as I said, I feel honored to be a part of this podcast and this discussion, and how we can make education better.
Yeah. Thank you
Nice.
so much.
All
Thank
right,
you, Ricky.
appreciate it. My pleasure.
All right, Shaka, I thought that was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating to learn more about an industry that I personally am unexperienced with. I don't know much about the catering world. I've certainly experienced as a client how it enhances events,
Hmm.
and situations, but I've never understood or really learned more about, the history of that particular industry and that particular business.
Was there
Were
something that particularly surprised you that Ricky said about the business? I have something, but I'm wondering if there's something that stood out to you that went, "Oh, I didn't know that about the hospitality slash catering space."
the number one thing that surprised me was the amount of innovation, the focus on innovation that they put on their services and on their business strategies. You made the declaration 50 years ago, the world they were looking at were microwaved dinners. And
Yeah.
now being able to navigate going from that all the way to what we have today, which are hundreds of people at a wedding with different food preferences and expectations and cultural infusions. And all of
Mhm.
a sudden, that same company has navigated a world that looks entirely different. And the way they navigate it was fascinating to me. I really enjoyed this notion of innovation that they focus on.
Yeah, yeah, and I thought you're right on to think about the corollary between that and the education space, right? How which has changed more, the catering space or the education space over the past almost 60 years? And I guess I would have said, well, catering probably can't change that much. It actually sounds like it has changed a whole lot. The thing that surprised me was when Ricky was talking about uh, coming up with new ways to retain talent and kind of pour into his employees. Like when he said that they very rarely have any temporary workers working at an event. I'll admit that that is just not that's not the idea or the my sort of preconception of that industry, right? I
Mhm.
kind of assumed it would be a lot of temporary workers, and maybe that just speaks to his business because I gather different business leaders would say different things, but he's got a business that's renowned for having high quality, and it makes sense when he's talking about how to come up with employee benefits, how to come up with, whether it's new 401k plans for folks who are, servers at events. That I think is really impactful and has a downstream effect. And then again, I think about education where most teachers um, do not have 401k plans. They have a state-based retirement plan, maybe a pension that doesn't even vest for 10 or 15 years, right?
Mhm.
That's pretty old school, and that's not a great way to retain talent. And so meanwhile, they've figured it out, or at least Ricky has in the hospitality industry. I thought that was really fascinating.
I thought that was interesting as well. I made the same connection, retention of employees in that industry and in his specific business versus what teacher retention looks like at different schools and in different states. The focus that he puts on creating a prosperous environment for employees makes sense that their retention is
Mhm,
as high as it is and that
mhm,
the engagement is as high as it is. The this idea of the environment that they work hard to create at Butler's Pantry rem- was interesting to me because everybody, as he described, feels a sense of pride in the work product that they're producing, which is, of course, going to make people more invested in their work. It's going to make people go out of their way to work harder. It's going to make people go out of their way to be creative in what they're producing. And I just would love to see something more like that in schools. Don't get me wrong, I think teachers feel an enormous amount of pride in the education that they're bringing to their students, as they
yeah.
should. It's important. But there's something there, and I'm not fully sure what it is that doesn't I don't feel that sense in the classroom always. I don't feel that sense in schools always. This ownership of what their work product is, this sense of owning and pride for what it is they're doing. And maybe it's because there's a lot of regulation and there's a lot of top down instruction giving to teachers as to what their work product has to look like, teaching to the test, etc. What are
Yeah,
your
maybe. Maybe that's it. I mean, I don't know that there's one answer to it. One thing it made me think about, though, is, obviously his is a family business. Um, and we'll see what happens in the future. I mean, he didn't sound to me like he was super committal to say, "Oh yeah, and when I'm done, either my son or my daughter's going to lead." He said, "Hey, they're learning the business. They're trying to figure this out too," which I thought was pretty cool.
Mhm.
But he's been leading this for a long time. He worked in the industry and kind of came up through this. I think about, say, a your typical public school district, like your typical public school superintendent, particularly in urban areas, that tenure is less than 3 years.
Mm.
So I wonder how much of that ownership, like how much ownership can you really have when you're basically like, it's the difference between renting and owning, right? You're 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 a short timer, 2 3 years, like that is not a lot of time. Right? It's not even enough time for a kid to get through middle school. So maybe there's just not enough sense of ownership there, and it's hard to know which comes first. Contrast that with, um, I think about some of the choice schools that I've engaged with or been a part of, whether or not they're charter schools, private schools, etc. And there's some places that have a head of school who's been there for 20 years, right? And this is hard work. I think any school environment is hard work. but that longevity does create ownership that I think results in quality outcomes day in, day out. Not always, but I think they're related.
Yeah, I love, and I'd be so curious what the people listening to this conversation feel, because it's so dynamic. Staying in one place for a long time builds this sense of pride, builds this sense of ownership. Occasionally, it also builds a sense of resistance towards change. You've
Yeah,
done something,
complacency, right? Yeah.
complacency. You've done something a certain way for a long period of time. You're uninclined to change it. That didn't seem at all to be the case of Butler's Pantry. Thus, they're having tremendous success. So, weighing all those different factors, you want people to be at a place long enough where they have established and can build a sense of ownership and pride in the work they're doing and the community that they're creating. So, I'm curious what your thoughts were on the 4 Ps:
Love them.
positivity,
Love them.
passion, poise. I mean,
I
imagine
couldn't
what
write them down fast enough. Tell us what they were again. Remind us.
positivity, passion, poise, putting other people first.
Yeah. And then right after that, I don't know if you caught it, but he gave kind of a fifth P. He was like, and the people, talking about the like employees. And I thought, how has Ricky not written this book? This is the book, right? The 5 Ps. Um, and then he calls it the P pod. Come on. It's written itself. Um,
I know.
so I thought that was so powerful. It was, again, such a reminder to me, and maybe to folks listening, that when we asked him about quality, like what are the things that are important? What are the drivers of success? He didn't go to, um, oh, we're trying to make X% margin per event. He didn't go to, we're trying to have this employee retention year over year, or the taste of the food, right? He had these things that were much grander, I thought,
Definitely.
and both aspirational, but I know he could put some specifics around each one of those pillars. And I thought that was really, really strong. And what it reminded me of is I talked to a district leader some years ago, superintendent, urban district. I said, "What are you working on?" She was fairly new. And she said, "Well, we've got a new strategic plan, and we have uh, 14 items." I said, 14? Well, then you have none,
Yeah,
because
right. Unfortunately.
you can't pursue 14 major objectives at once, right? And so Ricky's list was 4. That to me seems really thoughtful. You can be intentional about it. You can pour into them, but you're not trying to do everything all at once.
Yeah, I agree with every single thing you just said. I just love this idea of educators, people in the education world hearing this episode, listening to those 4 Ps and what they look like in his industry, and imagining what they would look like in someone's classroom, imagining what they would look like in someone's back to school announcement with all, the students
Yep.
looking at them, sharing those 4 Ps and saying to the kids or to the adults, this is what we want you to focus on:
Yep.
positivity, passion, poise, the way you're carrying yourself, the way you're interacting with other people, the way you're looking at the future year and your classmates with that positivity. There were so many ways that I imagined that specific part of the conversation having such a positive impact on
Yep.
educators and school leaders in the education world.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone mention poise as one of like the core tenets of their business plan, or kind of their ethos. And I really like that. And I do think that's one that would make such an impact in schools too, right? It's something, I guess maybe people talk about professionalism, and that's pretty close. It's pretty related. But, any of us who've been in a classroom with real human students knows there are times when, the the you're low on the poise meter.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I think about how keeping that at the forefront, how impactful that would be. That's also something that um, in the hospitality space, in the catering space, I don't think that would be easy to maintain either. And I mean, just
Totally.
imagine you're at an event, you've got sort of, we've all seen people who at an event are, for one reason or another, are not on their best behavior and are, demanding or uh, being, emotional or frustrated or just whatever.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I'm sure for his employees, for Ricky's employees, they've got to come back to that and go, all right, who are we? We are positive and we're poised, right? And yeah, now do the classroom, now do a middle school. Yeah, really
Yeah.
impactful.
So the last thing that he mentioned that I hope educators and those in the education space focus on from his conversation was the notion of focusing on clients, focusing
Mhm,
on those that you're serving. And the next step of that was what he described as cutting the cloth to fit the pattern,
mhm,
tailoring what his work product is, tailoring what he's offering to specifically meet that needs. So it's more than just focusing on who they're serving and sort of making sure that, you know, they're giving someone something that they like. It's giving someone something that they want, something
yeah,
that works for them.
yeah,
Not just saying you have A, B, or C options, choose which one you know, don't like least. It's saying you have these are A, B, and C options to get you started about what might be available to you. And then let's have a conversation. And I think about that in the context of education. You know, we have students that learn different ways. We have students that have come from different cultures, backgrounds, home lives. We have students that feel differently about themselves than, you know, the person standing next to them feels about themselves. And what would it look like to embrace more of this idea of the education system or the instruction actually meeting the needs of the students it's intended to serve
yeah,
versus just here's an option, pick or choose if you want the advanced class or not the advanced class. And I know they're
yeah.
different, but this is where, you know, adopting, being inspired by something someone else from a different industry says, and then adopting what it looks like and making it your own comes into play.
Yeah, that's right. And I think someone or maybe a group of listeners that I hope hears that message that you just described. I hope it's policymakers, right? Because
Oh, yes.
it's sort of at the policymaker level that people often think, okay, well, now to borrow from the hospitality industry, we think we're pretty good at making chicken cordon bleu. So I hope you like chicken cordon bleu. And if you don't, well, I have this other meal for you. It's called chicken cordon bleu. Well, that is not okay, right? There have to be other options because people have not just different tastes, but different needs, and
Right.
students absolutely don't need to all be in the same environment. If so, we'd all be having chicken cordon bleu, which was very in fashion. I think when Butler's Pantry first started, and now you don't really see that on menus anymore. Um, so no, I think policymakers though I hope hear that, like, all right, we can have high quality for all kids, but frankly, a major factor in that is is cutting the cloth to meet the pattern. In this case, the students are the patterns, and so what do they need?
Hmm.
I thought that was really powerful. He also mentioned, I think he called it the MIBE Tribe, which I loved.
Yep.
He had a couple zingers, but make it better, man. If every school, and this is not just public schools, every educational service provider needs to be asking themselves, how do we make it better? How do we make it better? And if you're a parent and you feel like your school is not asking that, then you need to ask it of them. How can they make
That's
it better?
great.
And are they listening to and responding to my feedback when I give suggestions? Because we can't be complacent when it comes to education.
I think that's so good. I think that really, I love the bringing policymakers into the conversation and encouraging them to look at some of these other industries and adopt some of their strategies and way of doing things. I think ultimately what this conversation highlighted, which is pretty much at the core, we talk about ethos, the ethos of our mission is to highlight the importance of cross-sector dialogue,
Mhm.
to drive home how necessary it is for people, regardless of professions, to be having conversations about their best practices. Because when you're learning about someone else's best practice and applying it to your own life, you will enhance your way of doing things. You
Yeah.
will broaden your perspectives and therefore your horizons, and your way of doing things will evolve as influenced by other people's best practices. So, this conversation with Ricky about Butler's Pantry and his world of hospitality and catering, we just experienced how largely it can inform other practices and other professions. I'd be curious what, for those listening, what are the different best practices that they've observed from other professions that have informed the way they're doing things? Was it something they experienced in the medical profession? Was it something they experienced in the music industry? Where are they seeking inspiration to better their way of doing things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we leave it there. And Caitlin, as always, great to talk to you on another edition of Quality Matters.
Thanks, Shaka.
All right, see ya.